Okay, so here we are in FL Studio. Now, when you open up FL Studio, yours may look different to what I've got here. This is because I use a template, so I don't have to reset up my mixer tracks every single time. So I just have them set up and colored by default, just to speed up my workflow. If you want to follow on step by step and have this the same, there's a download in the description below, and that will have a FLP, which is a Fruity Loops project template. And if you open that up, you'll then be starting from the same point here. But if you have your own template and things already, or you just want to start, don't worry about it and just follow along from there. So we're going to build this trap beat out using just the default samples that are available in FL Studio. So in your browser, you'll have a section here called packs, and we're going to load a couple of sounds up from drums here. So if we just go down to kicks, we've got the 808 here. That's a really nice low bassy kick drum. We're going to add that. If we right click, we're going to send to selected channel, and it's going to go to this blank sampler up here. And we've now got that loaded in there, which is great. There's some other sounds we're going to want as well. We're going to make use of this 707 kick. If we right click, and this time we can do open in new channel, and you'll see it stacked up there for us nicely. And we want some hat sounds. We're going to use the 808 hat. Nice closed hat there. I'm going to add that to a new channel too. And if we get into snares, I think we're going to use some kind of rim. Do you know what? We'll use the 808 snare as well. We'll stick with it. So those are our absolute basic of bass drum sound. And what we're going to do now is just put together a really basic beat, and we're going to do it using the piano roll. The reason we're going to use the piano roll, it's a little bit easier to create the hi-hat rolls and the snare rolls that work well in this genre. If we were to just fill them in here, we can only do a 4 out of 4. We can go a lot deeper and apply a lot of changes by using the piano roll. So let's just start out with the kicks. If we right click on the sound, we can drop it into the piano roll here. And notice that in FL Studio, by default, C5 is going to be where your sample triggers. If you go C4, it's going to be really, really bassy. And if you go C6, it'd be really high pitched. So C5 is going to be your basic trigger. Now, one thing to note, it's at 130 BPM. I'm feeling we're going to go a little bit slower for this. We're going to bring it down to say 110. We'll just do a real simple beat. So we're going to come in right on the first beat here. We want that first one to have full velocity and really hit hard. And if you press L in FL Studio, it's going to switch between pattern and song. Now for the minute, we'll stay in pattern, but we're going to switch to song afterwards. And just go for the really simple pattern, just like this. Now notice the one where it rolls here and it goes into the next one. It's causing some popping and clicking. Just listen again to the last hit and this first hit here. Yeah, what we can do to fix that really quickly, if we just bring up our little channel rack here, we can open the 808. You see this little icon just here? It's going to be our ADSR. We can enable that envelope. They bring the attack right down, and we're just going to work out what sort of timing we need so that pop no longer occurs. Yeah, so we're still getting a good feeling from that 808 there. Now you notice I've extended the notes out a little bit. When you've got the envelope working, depending on the note length is how long they'll play for. Now the last one here I've made a little bit shorter. I did that just by holding Option, and I can drag it to anywhere I want without it snapping to the grid. Now we're just going to take the other kick and layer them together, the 707. So if we click up here, we can drop that onto the 707. And here we're going to vary the velocities a little bit. We want the ones that land on the one beat to be louder than any that are on the off. What we're doing here, we just want some extra volume and some extra high end coming in just to make our kick stand out. It's a little bit much at the moment. So if we hold Control, we can select all of the points here. If we hold down Option or Alt, we can use the mouse wheel or magic mouse and change all the velocities at once. That's balanced that a little bit better for us. Now that's our kick pattern. I'm going to put that in here and I'm just going to rename it. So now if we press L, it swaps into song mode. We've worked it out here, so we've now got a nice 4-bar. We're going to move on to making the next pattern. We can just click up here. And this time we're going to do our snare. And we want to make sure that pattern 2 is already dropped. I think we're going to put some rolls and changes in, so we're going to have this a little bit longer here. We want this to be much louder. Cool, that's given us a nice little snare roll pattern. Let's do our hi-hat pattern next. It's good that we just name everything as we go along, because it helps us in the long run. So for our hat, we're going to do some alternate patterns here. It's something you'll hear a lot in trap. It will just start quite simply and then build up into really quick rolls. So we have something like this just to start off. And we want to change the velocity, so there's lots of change here, because just a constant dynamic doesn't feel as natural moving. And we'll have a singular hit. Now, at the minute, the most we can do is 4 hits per bar, which is the same as the step sequencer. If we go into snap to grid up here, we can change that into something like half beat. So there's just 2, or we can go much more extreme, do 1/6 and put it on triplets, or we can then even go into steps here, where we can really up the ante. And build some crazy rolls. We just do some quiet sort of ghost hits in here just to give a bit of a feel. And then we're going to take, using Control, highlight, and then we do Shift to bring all of these over. We're just going to copy that pattern over. Now I think it would be nice to have something that signifies the change here of the end of the 4 bars. So on this second snare pattern that we've got here, if we right click on it, we can do Make Unique. It will now give us snare 2, so we can see that's a change. And just by double clicking on it, we can bring it back in. What we'll do is we'll introduce a pretty intense snare roll as well. That's going to go in time with that hi-hat roll. Well, so that's a really basic drum pattern down there, but it feels a little bit rigid, a little bit too sort of on point, if you will. Let's get a bit of quantization going with the hats. If we open up our pattern here, we want to make sure we select the notes. We can use the little option just up here, click on the arrow. We're going to go down to Tools and we're going to take Quantize. Now in here, you use a template for it. Something like the 16 MPC 2 is going to work really well here. So you would click and we would choose whatever template we like. These are just the default ones for FL Studio. We'll open that and we're going to increase the sensitivity and you'll see it will move some of the points in place. Yeah, see how it's joining those notes together in some places. So we could have a listen to what that would create. There's a bit more of a feel to it here, and you see it's quantized the levels as well. We could take that out if we wanted to, and it could maintain the levels we put in. Cool, so that's just our basic drum pattern laid out now. Last thing we'd do is just a little bit of housekeeping. If you press F9, you can bring our mixer back up. And if you loaded up the same project as me, you will be able to just assign these real quickly. And if we just drag that, we're just going to get the 808 to appear in the kick drum pattern. The 707 can go in perk 1 for us. The 808 hi-hat can go under our hi-hat, and our snare can sit under the snare. We should now see they all sit in the correct mixer, and then they route to our drum bus here. That means really quickly later on, everything's set out for us to mix and start balancing our track. So that's a basic way of getting our drums laid out. Let's look at So we learned how to set up some velocities, how to change the snap grid, and how to create unique patterns. So you see there we've got snare 1 and then snare hashtag 2, meaning we've made a unique pattern out of that. Now it's a little bit dry at the moment. If you guys are using your own samples, it might have a lot more vibe to it, but we're gonna have to work to bring a little bit out of these. So what we're gonna do first is just use the pre-computed effects, just a tiny bit, just to add a little bit of flavor to some of the sounds. So if we roll it back on the kick pattern here, we've got the 808 and the 707, which respectively sound like this. Pretty uninspired, right? We are going to make use of an effect built into the sampler just to beef up that 808 and give it a bit more character. So if you open up, you get the little sampler here, and we used the ADS-on envelope last time, and we curved that a little bit so we could stop it from popping and clicking when we've got rapid movements. If we go back here into this section, we've got the little spanner here and the little valve icon. If we click that valve icon, it changes to what we've got here, and there's a couple of effects in here. Now we're going to make use of this boost, EQ, and maybe this clip right here. So we're going to solo this. This is now going to play us that 808 and 707 loop. And we're going to add a little bit of a boost into this 808, and it's going to start distorting pretty quickly. There you go, so just that tiny bit of boost, and that clip just gives us a little bit of grunge to it there. Now if we push the EQ to the right, it adds top end. If we push it to the left, it adds low end. We want to add a little bit of top here, I think. So we've got something like that. Just a bit more character into it than what we had originally. Yeah, that kicks us in the face a little bit harder. So we might do something similar with the snare as well, try and get a little bit of character out of that. Awesome, so that's a little look at the pre-computed effects there, and you can do that with any sample you drop into this sampler. Just smash them a little bit into the distortion. It's just a nice quick way to get the sound that you want or want to move towards as quickly as you like. So what I think we're going to do next is throw a melody in. So if we hit F9, we can get the mixer up. The reason I bring the mixer up, whenever I drop a VST in, I like to get it straight onto the channel it's going to be in, so I can start working on it straight away rather than putting it in there later like we did at the end of the last video. And as we're just using all of the stock plugins here, let's decide what we're going to use. Okay, so I own FL Producer Edition. I wouldn't advise going any lower than that ever. That comes with Citrus, so I think we'll roll with Citrus, and that way all of you guys are able to follow along as well. So Citrus comes with a whole bunch of presets, and I think what we'll do, we'll grab a preset instead of making this a program Citrus session, and we'll maybe tweak it into what we're after. So I'm feeling something piano-y for this type beat, so let's grab the E Grand patch. So we've loaded that up. We're now going to make a new pattern. We'll call it piano, and we're going to get that into the piano roll. Got it on the E grand, let's have a listen. I'm not feeling it. Let's change that sound. Yeah, let's go with the FM piano instead. So when we're using the piano roll for this sort of thing, there's a couple of really helpful tools hidden away in here that we can use. What we're going to do is use the helpers to help us identify our key. So if we click on the little arrow up here, we can go down to helpers and we can do scale and highlighting. And do you know what? I fancy F sharp minor. So we can now choose F sharp, and you'll see the keys changed for F sharp. If we go back into the helpers, and we could now choose minor natural. That's going to be the normal minor, the exact like opposite key of major, but we are going to go minor melodic. And we're going to build up a nice little melody in here. I think a 4-bar of some description will work. Now the way I zoomed in just then on FL Studio OS X, which hopefully you guys are using, if you hold down Command and use your magic mouse or scroll in your trackpad, you can zoom in. And if you hold Option, you can zoom horizontally in and out. So since we're in F sharp, let's lead off of the F. I'm thinking just something like this. Then we'll drop down for the next key. And we'll keep that same rhythm. So we're going to have a long note, miss a step, 2 short notes, half step into another. I think we'll go 1 note above. So that works nice for the first 2 bars. We're going to duplicate it and then just add a really slight adjustment of an extra note in here. Cool, so I'm not feeling that. I think we'll bring it back to the start here. Let's go long. Alright, instead, maybe doubling up on the way out. Yeah, let's try that. So if we go back to the main section here, we click on piano at the top, which is what we named our loop. We can drop that in here, and we've now got our full loop together. If we hit L to get back into song mode. Okay, so here's where we can start extending our arrangement a bit. If we hold Command and highlight, we'll duplicate the whole lot. We should now have a pretty nice 8-bar run. However, on that second iteration, it can be a little bit difficult to have exactly the same thing over again. So let's have a tiny variation in our hats. So we're going to make unique. We've now got hi-hat pattern 2 going on. I think maybe we'll step up the intensity of them. And what we'll do, we'll take these sections out here and we'll use this little run instead. So we've got this instead, and they should just be a bit more full on. So now we've got 8 bars. We've got a variation in the melody every 2 bars, a variation in the hi-hat every 4 bars, and a variation in the snare every 2 bars. Cool. Now, what we could look at doing now is maybe adding some chords and just thickening that melody up a bit. I think we'll even try it within the same section here. So if you don't know chords, a really simple rule is every other note within the key, that's going to give you a triad. So we can try something like that. If we lead off the F, knowing that we lead off the F in our, the F sharp, sorry, in our main melody. So we could take something like that for a triad. Then we could work out the F triad as well, which would be U. And we can just repeat those. What would be nice would be to lead into each one. So we could do something like this, which would give just a little bit of a feeling of moving into that next one. Maybe make it longer or shorter, I'm not too sure. Yeah, longer, and I think we'll go up. Cool, so we've now got a really simple chord pattern as well. And what I reckon we'll do, we're now going to take our 8 bar, we're going to highlight that whole lot, we're going to duplicate that, so we've got a 16, we're going to delete this second piano, we're going to make unique on the first one, I'm going to highlight the chords and this random note that I just reintroduced. And what you can do to delete a lot of notes at once on Mac is function backspace. We're going to highlight our made unique piano line. We've now got a full 16 bar with different variations happening every 2 bars at least. I think we can use a nice technique on this first set here, just to bring this chord on a bit without introducing any effects. What we'll do is we'll copy it so it comes out on every other beat. We're going to highlight all of them. If we hold Option and scroll with the mouse, we can reduce them in level to go about 20% of the original. And then we're going to take down each one sequentially afterwards. And that should give us like a delayed fade out type effect. If a bit much, and we'll take them all back and we'll just have it so it drops on every other bar there. And we'll highlight them all again. We reduced it by a bit much, so we can use that trick again just to bring them all up in level. And we could have them occurring bang on the bars here. That odd signature didn't work as I was hoping, so we've just gone for on the beat. It just helps it fade out a little bit better. Now let's do a similar technique with these chords in this one. We'll bring the next lot onto each beat and we're going to reduce them down in length because they're just going to be like these delayed hits. We'll bring them all down in one go. gives us some extra movement going on there. We'll just tidy this up a little bit. We're starting to get a busier project now, so I think we should just do a little maintenance. So you see where we've got track 1 through 4 here. Now we've been naming our patterns as we go, but we've not been naming these at all. So we can, right clicking on them, do rename color and icon. So let's have it as kick, and let's assign a color to each one. I'll normally do sort of oranges for percussion, but you can obviously do this however works best for you. I'll do slightly different variations on it for each one as I go. Tops and things like that, I'll normally go more of a yellow so I can quickly look at them. I'll just mark it as tops rather than hats. So we might include things like shakers in the same set of patterns. We'll call that keys. And we normally go purples around there. That just gives us a little bit of organization, and we know what we're doing where. And also, if we start bringing automation in, we can color the lanes the same so we know what is working with what. So I think the next thing we're going to do is just look to put a baseline underneath the chords we've already put together. And we're going to do that by using an 808 and creating an 808 distorted baseline to go under this, and see how we can get that to work. So we're going to go to our 808 here, and this is just in packs under drums. If you've got your own sample pack, go ahead and use that. Principle will be the same. We're going to right click and we're going to do open in new channel. That's going to give us this just here. And what we're going to do is take our melody from here. So if we hold Command, highlight, Command and C to copy. If we hit F2, we're going to go, and if we click up here, we'll take a new pattern. We'll just put bass in, and we're going to do 808 kick 2. We're going to drop that in there. This is probably going to be quite a high octave. So if we hold Command and press down, we can drop it down in octaves. Press L to put it in loop mode. Cool, and that gives us a baseline nice and easy just by pitching down that kick there. We're going to take it a little bit further though. So if we just loop these first few bars, we can hear in context what that's doing for us. Well, that's okay, and it's reinforcing the notes. It would be useful to be able to change them and have a little bit of our own sound to it. So we're just going to use what's in the sampler here. If we go on pre-computed effects, we're just going to put clip on and just give it a little bit of a boost. And if we go to the icon up here, we're going to turn the envelope on here. And you'll hear now that attack's gone because we can control the envelope of the sound. We still want it to come in, but we just want to get rid of that kick type sound. We want to get rid of the pop and have it come in like that. You have some more sustain. I'm going to reduce the decay a bit. Bit longer on the release there. So it was like this, and now it's like this. Go back to the pre-computed effects and I quite like it clipped. Now we can also look at holding the notes a bit longer in here. So let's make the first one last right until the second beat on all four. So we've got some variation in length now as well. What we could do as well is do a bit of a crossfade. We could trim the sample down a bit and we could crossfade it into itself, make it so it sustains a bit. Let's see what we've got. What I've done there is just change the root key from C to E there. And it's just changed the overall tone of the 808 and how it responds, and it works a little bit better with the melody there. And we've also brought it back up an octave as well. And we're going to use the low pass here, and we're just going to take some of the top end back off. I think we're going to bring the piano down in an octave as well. Do you know what? We're going to change the piano sound out entirely. I just don't like it. Let's try and see if we can get away with FL keys. And we'll keep that melody, but we'll put it up an octave so it's really on the high notes. And we're going to try and build out a new chord progression. And I'm leading off of F sharp. If I remember rightly, we're in F sharp minor. One thing with FL, it doesn't keep the key you're in per project. Yeah, that's correct. So let's use the stamps here and take some. So what we'll do, we're just going to try and build some further chord progressions out. And we could potentially lower this as well. What we'll do, we'll have the same chord again, strike here, and then we'll bring a variation in. For this, instead of striking the same chord, we'll strike this chord twice. And we'll use this chord again on here. And we want to bring something here that is going to beg for a resolution, which perhaps something like that. works, what we'll do is bring it back to around here. What we might do here as well is take this as our new chord line. I'm going to bring this back down. Yeah, I'm going to take these down in velocity. And the notes we copied, we're going to make a much longer bass line. So if we highlight these, do Function and delete, we can do Command and V, and that's going to drop these chords in here. So what we'll do is use this to make our bass line, and we'll take some of the lower notes on each, step through, just give us something like that. And we'll need to bring this up probably 2 octaves. What we're going to do with that is we're going to be ruthless with a limiter and really crush that sound to give us this really solid low end. So I'm going to bring FL limiter in. We're going to dial the ceiling back a little bit to about 0.3 and bring a bit of saturation in for about 1 dB, and we're just going to hammer this up. See how we're losing a lot on the sustain here? That's due to the nature of the sample only being a certain length. We could crush it a bit harder. I think this melody really needs fixing now. I'm going to get rid of the second one. Kind of feel we could sacrifice the notes and just live with the chords for the time being. Yeah, that's getting pretty heavy. One thing I will say, we're losing a lot of the kick to the bass. So let's just have a look at setting up a sidechain real quick. So if we go into the mixer and onto the kick, we can then look at the bass where we've assigned our 808 bass. If we right click down here, we can do sidechain to this track. This sends a silent signal of the kick to this channel. And in our Fruity limiter here that we've already got loaded, if we go to the comp section, we have a bit here that says sidechain. We can right click it and see what's assigned to it. Or we just drag up to 1. And now every time the kick happens, it will trigger this compressor. So to set that up, we need to give it a bit of a ratio. We need to bring the threshold down. You can see this top section here that whenever the kick triggers, it's taking out this much of the bass. Now the curve here can be really useful. You see how it's quite jaggedy on the release? We could put the release up, it's already quite high. If we use a different curve, it will hold it a little bit better. You can see the difference between the two there just by changing the curve type. Now we can be really extreme with this if you want and have it completely take the bass away. I find it best just to have a balance between the two. It's just begging to have a melody that goes in with those chords. So what I think we're going to do is take this pattern here, so we can just double click on the piano #2 there and see our chords. And I think what we're going to do is find a melody within the chords, and we'll clone FL keys. So if we go to the little channels up here, we right click, we're going to clone. Now we've got FL keys #2. If we go down to the piano roll, we're going to choose #2. We'll use the ghost notes in the piano roll here just to go around and see what's relevant to each chord and part and try and find a melody in there, and then we might switch the FL keys out into something else. If you can't see the ghost notes, you need to click up here on the little arrow. It's going to go orange when you're over it, down to helpers and ghost channels. You can also do Alt and V to turn that on and off. So let's try and find a melody within these chords that is going to sit with our track. We're leading off of that F. We could maybe do a high F. I think we'll let the chord develop and then bring a note in. And maybe run down the chord. Half step into the next. So what we're going to do is just try and find a melody and rhythm that fits within our chords. We're going to use the same notes for the most part. So we're going to switch it up into the 2 bars. So in that first beat, we've not had a note this time, and this time we're going to go and bring a note in. See how we go from there. So we want to get this ready now to return round to that F chord. I think if we build this up something like this. Right, if we highlight all of that, hold Command and press up, push it up an octave. That feels a bit awkward, get rid of that. These just feel too far apart, we can bring those down the octave. What works better in the first bit is the 2-step here. we can do is bring the first 2 bars up an octave. The only point that actually goes down is this second. There, that runs quite nicely. So we've kept the same rhythm for the first 3 bars. It changes up on the last one to have that quick run up. We introduce the run down on the 3rd bar. You just keep the exact same rhythm but alternate notes on the first 2. So it kind of builds up and works for us there. And notice the only note that drops on a chord is this A here. So everything else is in between the chords, so it gives the melody time to occur in between. Now it does work with the piano. I think maybe what we could do is jazz it up a little bit in the mixer. Let's give it its own channel. The FL keys is not the sexiest of sounds, but we can flex it up a little bit. Let's maybe push overdrive a little bit. Let's give it a reverb to go to. So we've just highlighted my FX channel here. If I just hit F2, I can just rename it verb, and we'll stick a reverb in there. F8's the shortcut just to bring up this menu here. We'll use the stock reverb, and we're just going to send that to that. We've used quite quiet notes. We're going to slam some volume in. I think I'm going to delay the reverb as well, but not everything else, just to see what feel that gives us. Yeah, we want that to be a little bit longer. Tempo sync. Get you on 1/4. Generally, I quite like to high pass if I do this sort of thing where I'm delaying a reverb, because you don't want any of the low end in there. So I just tend to put a high pass on. It just makes life a little bit easier. There you go. So wetting that up's really helped that develop a lot. Sounds a lot more pleasant to listen to, at least. Got some motion to it. Might be worth sending the other piano into here as well, but with much less level. Now this reverb bus thing we've made here is a pretty busy sound. What it will likely be worth doing is putting a sidechain on it as well. I mean, if we listen to the whole lot now. It's not too bad, it is a little bit overwhelming. What we can do is put Fruity Limiter on, which is just up here. We drag you in. And what we'll do, we will sidechain our drums, not just the kick, but all of the drums to it. So we select drums and we can right click down here and do sidechain to this track. So the sidechain means it's going to send to that track, but there's no level at all. And we're just going to get the compressor to read that. So where it says sidechain here, we can right click, we're going to go drums. And we're just going to set up quite a harsh ratio. And we're just going to pull out some areas of it. Yeah, that is just helping the drums cut through a little bit there. So you can see it's reducing by around 4 decibel on the drum hits, but it's releasing nice and quickly, so it's not affecting it too much. It's just taking that level away while the drums hit, just to free up a bit of space there, because it's quite a busy sound, taking up a lot of the stereo field. We're just here like controlling, making sure we don't muddy up the mix, and we've not even really started to mix yet. We just want everything to be as good as it can be before we even level it out. Alright, so what I would usually do here is I've got a loop, 16 bars, sort of working for me. I want to level it out so when I listen to it, it's always going to be working now. So I've done lots of random bits of MIDI and velocity. Instead of adjusting all that, I'll adjust the faders. So what I'll do is highlight from my kick. If I do Shift and Command, and we can then highlight the whole lot, like so. And we're even going to bring the reverb down because we have already adjusted that to the level we like. We want everything to come down in context. And what I'm actually going to do is drop it all the way down to 0. I'm now going to play the loop and bring the elements back in and just get a balance that's a bit more applicable. Now, something else I'm doing is turning my listening volume down really low. So I'm going to bring everything into a level where I can hear it nicely. And that should help me balance everything out relatively level. That's a very different balance to what we had before, but with my headphones down really low and just bringing all the bits in, that's what feels nicer. So I'll just work from here now because I know everything's not as muddied up and it's just a little bit clearer to keep working. So I think in the next video, we're going to look at maybe adding another element and try and look at building a hook into this as well. I will see you guys on the next video.